Welcome to another DragonLance Saga Dungeon Mastering 101 episode. It is Palas Deep Cult 23rd. My name is Adam, and today I'm continuing my Dragonlance gaming series all about dungeon mastering. Now, the moment every DM fears, the players ignore the obvious plot hook. They befriend the villain. They burn down the tavern you spent 2 hours designing. Improvisation isn't optional in Dungeons & Dragons. It's inevitable. This episode reframes improv from panic mode to core skill. Now, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, and you can support the channel by becoming a member here on YouTube or a patron on Patreon. You can even pick up Dragonlance Media or get $10 by signing up to startplaying.games using my affiliate links in the description below. All right, Corey, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. All right, so the first thing we're going to be talking about, improvisation is not making things up. Everyone should know this, right? Good improvisation isn't randomness. It's a structured reaction to things that are already occurring at your table. So you are responding to other people. You're not inventing something from nothing. That's regular prep. So prep gives you the raw material, whereas improv is connecting existing pieces in new and interesting ways. Again, based on the players at the table. So you're not always going to be able to railroad people into one specific tavern to do one specific job and then get out clean. You have to roll with the punches, right? So you don't need perfect answers. You got to always remember this. You don't have to have perfect answers to the reactions of the players. You just need to have consistent answers to them. So for example, I was expecting a sort of, how do you say? Hey, S. Tempington, thanks for tuning in. In my Tyranny of Dragons campaign, we had, not this last episode, but the one before that, a massive confrontation that was nearly all improv between the players, a renegade sorcerer hunter, a renegade wizard hunter, and the actual people at the Citadel of Karak-Tor. And also like a priestess of Morgian in a hag, right? So it was meant to be a enemy of my enemy is my friend situation, where they all sort of gang up on the hag. And for the most part, that ended up happening. But it got to a point where I quickly realized that the players were not going to be running off on their own and going to do stuff. They were sort of just sticking in the central core area of danger. And I knew that unless I was going to be pulling punches, that could end up spelling death for them. And so I instituted this a little bit sooner than I was planning on, well, much sooner than I was planning on, insurrection action by the Bakali within the Citadel, and they lured them into the basement. And so this is 100% improv from what I had planned to what was actually occurring. And then they ran off and got into the underneath sort of basement / dungeon area of the Citadel. And from there, I had thought they were going to like hide for a while, regroup, and then go back out there. But instead, they ended up staying in there. So I had to then improv and react and adjust things based on the choices that they made. Now, it's not to say they were right or wrong, because that is irrelevant. There is no right or wrong in tabletop role-playing. It's just choices and reactions. That's pretty much it. And you as the dungeon master have to be able to move with those choices, whether you planned them, whether you want to see them, whether you think the players can live through them. It doesn't matter. You just have to react to their choices because you're creating the world and setting it up. They're engaging with it, and then you have to play off of that. You cannot force them to do anything, and you shouldn't want to. All right, so the next part I wanted to talk about here is turning player surprises into opportunities. So when players surprise you, one of three things is actually happening. 1, the players are curious. 2, the players are testing boundaries. And 3, the players are deeply engaged. Again, another one that I can go back to in recent memory with the Tyranny of Dragons campaign is when the druid forsook their god and then ended up accepting power from Morgian and ended up doing some very, very evil things up to and including the death of one of the companions of the team. I did not know they were going to forsake their god. I did not know this was a story beat that was going to be happening. They just did it. And I was like, okay, well, here's some reactions the world would have to that. And I just rolled with it. And it ended up being really, really interesting and completely recontextualizing the campaign thus far. And I really actually appreciated it after the fact. And, during it, I was confused. I was just sort of reacting as one is supposed to do. But after the fact, I appreciate it because, again, the characters are invested in how they're treated, how the world is reacting to their choices. And that means that they care. And I love that. So instead of resisting the surprise as a dungeon master, you want to ask, well, what makes this interesting? When they make these choices, how is that making it interesting? And then you sort of like ramp up, that consequence or the reaction, or you lean into it. What could complicate? What could this complicate within the world itself? You have to be able to be ready to react with positive and negatives because nearly every choice the players make are based in positive and negative confines. There's always going to be reaction, right? And then who would react to this? So one thing that I've experienced in the past is when DMs seem like they're overtly punishing players. And what I try to do in my game is make sure it's very, very clear that what is happening is a reaction to what the players are doing and the choices they're making. At no point as a DM am I planning on hurting them or destroying their characters or punishing them for some slight. None of that matters to me. What matters to me is that they understand that the world is reacting to their choices and that they have to consider their choices before acting on them. Because if they don't, it could end up in their death. Like, that's just the reality of it. So surprises can be energetic and exciting. Your job as a dungeon master is to redirect it, not suppress it. You can always find a way to steer things back on course if you really want to do that. But to just reject what they're saying or how they're playing is to actually destroy the campaign itself, which again, sometimes you got to do, but try to avoid it if at all possible. Hey, Agent Viking, how you doing? You hope anyone's stuck indoors in the East Coast snowstorm, brought plenty of snacks. Oh yeah, there's like a big snowstorm over there. We don't have any here, which sucks because I want some. You really good crews. As an outside observer over the course of the channel, there's been very few counterproductive players. Yeah, I've been very fortunate in that. Everyone has been very, very cool, and I genuinely appreciate it. All right, the next thing I wanted to talk about. Hey, John, thanks for tuning in. Not every adventure should be Tomb of Horrors, but the consequences should bear the weight of verisimilitude. I mean, yeah, the reaction has to fit the action, right? So if you're in a dangerous place and you're not being quiet or careful, then you can stumble across very dangerous things. The players should know this. And that's where it's incumbent upon you as the dungeon master to properly prep them. Like, no, you're going into enemy territory that you don't know what exists. This has existed here for a long time. The chances of there being something vile in here are high. Make your choices. And what I always like to do is sort of throw, give me an insight check. And then try to feed them information that they may have gleaned or should know that I don't perceive them as relying on or using as decision-making tools, right? And so I try my best to help without tipping the scales in their favor. And it doesn't always work, but sometimes, You had a bad experience last Thursday with the group that you were with, and you explained in Discord. Yeah, I saw that. That was pretty brutal. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is the power of yes and its variants. Now, this is an improv tool, yes and. Never say no. It's always yes and. What yes and actually means is that you accept the intent behind the player's idea and build forward. But you're the DM, and so you also have to consider yes but, which is success with consequences, or no but, blocked action with forward motion. So here's an example here. You never just want to say no flat out. But if a player said, for example, in the last session, a player wanted to come back from death to have a last prayer and whisper and do one last spell. And I was clearly not going to let that happen. You can't just come back from death and do something. So I said, no, you can't do that. But here's the actual situation. You're not going to be dying. And we sort of talked about it a little bit and got back on track. So it was very, very clear that if you're dead, you're dead. Like, you're not going to be waking up and talking or casting spells or anything like that. However, you're not dead there. You're not dead yet. You're not at that point. And there's things that you could do before you drop if you want to have that moment of pre-death sort of experience, you know? Because I do think memorable deaths are an important part of role-playing. They inform the other players. They also build legend, and it's nice to have a player become a hero and a legend through the actions of their characters, right? And then there's the yes and then, which success that escalates. So if they want to do something that sort of breaks what you had planned or you were imagining, you say, all right, yeah, you can do it. You can definitely do that. But here's the steps and consequences. Or say yes, and then this is going to happen as a reaction to that. So do your very, very best never to shut anyone down, but enable them, let them know that there are consequences involved with choices and actions, and that you have to have a semblance of consistency in the world that you're creating with them, right? So improvisation is not saying yes to everything. It's avoiding dead ends. So the rule of thumb that you should always sort of take in is that never let a player action stop the story, just redirect it in a different direction instead. And you should be okay if you do that. Let's see, what do you guys have to say here? Anthony, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you. You're buried again in the snow. Well, that's no good. Hey, Kim, thanks for tuning in. All right, so consequences are so important for verisimilitude, even when improvising, for sure. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is the 3-question improv trick. So this is a practical tool that you can apply, and whenever you're caught off guard, just ask yourself these 3 things. Who cares about this? I actually do. I do this when my kids ask to do something, like, hey, can I borrow the car and go do this? I have to think, okay, what are the downsides to them being able to do that? Are there any? Is there any reason why they shouldn't be able to do that? Are there like a rule in place or something like that? And who's it actually going to hurt? You know, I try to do that with the games as well. So you ask yourself, who cares about this? What NPC, faction, or force would react to the choice that the character is trying to make? What changes because of this? Status, danger, relationships, stakes. How is the world going to change based on the character making this choice? And then, of course, the last one being, what new problem does this choice create? And that projects a forward momentum for the game. You always have to consider these things because the world is a living entity. It goes whether or not the players do anything. If they're going to take a short or long rest, then the world is still revolving. So the choices they made are still in motion by all those different factions and people and NPCs and monsters and everything, whether they're actively involved or not. It's still happening, and there's still reverberations out from that. And so we have to think about that as the dungeon master, always. And that's really it. You don't need lore, you need consequences. This trick turns chaos into plot, because those choices, those reactions are going to build the ultimate story that you're telling together. It's going to inform the course of the player's future choices and actions based on their previous ones. And that's an important aspect for players so that they know that they are affecting the world around them and that they are an important part. that they actually can change the world. And they're not just tiny little pawns that no matter what they do has no impact on the world. Hey, Engine Joe, how you doing? Sitting here in about a foot of snow. Oh, wow. John, thanks for tuning in. As any example of the DL stories that particularly strike you as a situation where the DM said, are you sure you want to do that? Maybe. Storm of the Hyclaris Tower. Yeah, I mean, maybe Tanis running up and stabbing the Everman after Flint drops down. Like, are you sure you want to attack that person? Like, you don't actually know the details here. You're just reacting to something. Tanis knocking boots with Kitiara and constantly pining over her. Be like, we get it was good, but are you sure you want to keep doing this? Because there's people here who actively love you and they're here. They haven't abandoned you, you know? Stuff like that. Taz every 5 minutes. Are you sure? Yeah, for sure. All right, so the next one I wanted to talk about here is improvising NPCs without panic. This should just be normal, right? How do you as a dungeon master narrate non-player characters? So give them a want. Every NPC that exists should have motivation. It may not be grand in scope, but it's something. Maybe they just want to live in peace. Maybe they want to get a cheeseburger, you know? I mean, whatever it is, there should be a want. And then you got to give them a mood. What is this person like? What is informing their behavior right now? We dealt a lot with morale in earlier versions of this game, Dungeons & Dragons specifically. But you don't have to rely on morale. I mean, if combat is occurring and NPCs are watching and they don't want to die, maybe they pop smoke and they're just like, you know what? I'm in a terrible mood. I got to get the hell out of here. I don't want to help these players anymore. This is too dangerous. And maybe they just leave. Or maybe they had completely different desires in the first place. Like I brought in and I've sort of changed the character of Jamna Gleamsilver in the Tyranny of Dragons campaign to being something a little more proactive on her character scale. And she was with the players for a while, but she had her own want. And she's going after it regardless of what the player characters are doing. So when she was with them and helping them. And when she's not, she's popping smoke and doing her own thing. Damn the players and what they want to do. Because she has her own motivations. She's not just a henchman that just does whatever anyone around her says. And you have to give them leverage. Non-player characters have to have some sort of leverage in life. They have choices. They have autonomy, just like the players do. It may not be as potent to the story, but their reactions to the players should come from a position of leverage, right? The players are coming to them for something they want. So that's the leverage. The players want to stop being bothered by those people, but the NPCs have knowledge about the players. That gives them leverage. So want plus mood plus leverage equals instant personality. Good, bad, indifferent, ugly, whatever you have. It gives them a sense of life, right? So you do not need accents, though I kind of like doing voices. What you need is intention. You need to make sure that regardless of how you portray the bubbliness or the, mannerisms or the voice of the NPC, that the description is clear, that they think this way, they're in this mood, and they have this leverage. And that is informing how they're behaving. This is going to also help players understand how they should engage with them. Because if they engage with them in a negative way, maybe they don't get the information that they were looking for. If they're too overly friendly, maybe the NPC takes advantage of them. You always got to consider all sides of things here. I'm not sure what version of D&D started this, but you like the idea that every character has a big want and a big flaw. For example, a fear of heights and prejudice against elves. Yeah, I mean, and it's not something that you have to plan ahead of time, ever, as a DM. That's the whole, that's the core of improving. What I like to do is have a basic understanding of what's going on in the world with the character right now. And they're going to react based on that state of the world. And then they're going to react on how the players are treating them. And if the players treat them one way or another, then they're going to react as appropriate to that treatment, based off of the initial impression. So it may be different every time I run the same adventure with a different group, because the group reacts differently to that single NPC. So there's never a static reaction. It's always a reaction based on X and Y and Z, right? You always have to consider the world and the players throughout the course of engaging with NPCs. All right, is the second to last thing I want to talk about? Yeah. The second last thing I want to talk about was where to go. Improvising locations. So when players go somewhere unplanned, and this happens, I prep for it as best as I can, but sometimes it happens. You have to think in different layers. One is the sensory detail. What are they sensing about this new location? The next is tension point. Think of one tension point about this location, and then think of an interactive element about the location. What this does is gives you a little bit of depth without requiring you to have a whole lot of prep and to know exactly what everyone's doing at all times and where they're going to go at all times. Just what sensory detail, what tension point, and what interactive element. And then suddenly a location comes alive and players can interact with it in that way. It's all you need to run a scene, and you can always fill in details later if you feel like you need to. But you don't always need to. Random encounters can be just random in random locations, and it can just be left at that. If players end up asking, hey, what was the name of that place? If there's someone that would know, then you can tell them and just make it up. You know, it might catch you off your guard. I've been caught off guard so many times in every game I run. But that's kind of part of the fun, right? All right, the last thing I wanted to talk about, let's see. You love it when the DM uses character voices to draw players into the game. Yeah, it's nice. It's fun. Derek Crown Guard, despite the autocorrect flub, he was a shit heel. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That would be a good, are you sure you want to do it? Voriton, thanks for tuning in. Your players want to chase draconians into sewers without a map, and you freaked out and was like, you guys know that entering the sewers unguided is a death trap. Sewers of Plantis. I mean, they may not know that, hence their desire to do it. Or if they do know it, they think that they can survive it, and let them go. You know, if they want to get in there, just start thinking, because thief guilds are going to be using those. Gully dwarves are going to be using those. Monsters are going to be using those. There's a lot of things that are going to be coming and just dwelling and crawling and hunting in sewers. Start throwing that shit at them, and they'll learn. They'll learn that it's dangerous. I mean, don't be cruel about it. Be realistic. You know, random monster tables and contextual encounters, but you know, just don't prevent them and punish them if they want to try something challenging or dangerous. Characters would know first time ever playing the world, but yeah, you felt bad not letting them go in there. What are you gonna do? Let's see. Improvisation and player trust. Improvisation feels scary when, 1, you're afraid of breaking canon, 2, you're afraid of being inconsistent, and 3, you're afraid of looking unprepared. Okay. Don't worry about making mistakes and looking stupid or flubbing. You're a human being. We all make mistakes. We are all imperfect, and we all flub and make mistakes. That's totally normal. Every player I've ever played with has understood that I am a human being running the game, so I'm going to make mistakes from time to time. And that's why it's important for them to feel comfortable to challenge you on a ruling, but not take up a whole bunch of time on the ruling, right? So if I make a call and they're like, well, what about this? And you just say, you know, react to it and then move along. But you have to be consistent when you're dealing with locations and NPCs. And if you have to then stop, take a 5 count or a 6 count and try to remember how you behaved before so that there's integrity to the consistency of the NPC, then do that. Just be like, oh, hold on a second, let me think about this, and then give your ruling. But just flying by the seat of your pants and throwing out rulings, you could find yourself being inconsistent because you're afraid of having dead air. Don't worry about dead air. Worry about consistency. Players don't see you prep. They see confidence at the table, and they see consistency over perfection and commitment over polish. Players are willing to give a little bit if they're seeing consistency and development in the world, and they're seeing that their choices have reactions and effects on the world. So make sure you're treating them as human beings, and you're, most importantly, and this goes for everyone in life in general, you're treating yourself as a human being, of someone of significance and value. You have an important role in your life. You're the arbiter of your life. And so you have to forgive yourself. You have to be able to laugh at yourself. You have to be able to own mistakes and try not to correct them, but not beat yourself up over every little mistake. It's life. That's it. And move on, you know? All right. So ultimately, when it comes to improv as a DM, you are not losing control when you improvise. You are actually collaborating with the players. The best campaigns often come from abandoned notes, unexpected alliances, and accidents that you decide were intentional later on. Improvisation is where player agency becomes real. So keep in mind, improv is not chaos, it's structured reaction. When surprised, accept the energy, ask the 3 questions, create your consequences, and move forward. You don't need, as a dungeon master, you don't need to predict the players. You just need to respond to them. That's all they expect, and that's all you should ever expect. This is about having fun more than anything else. So keep that in the back of your mind. All right. What do you guys have to say? One of your favorite things about sewers in D&D are methane and fire spells. Oh, no. Eek, it's like the phlogiston. All right, that is it for this episode of Dungeon Mastering 101, running the game, improvisation for Dungeon Masters. Do you have any tips and tricks based on your experience or as a player or as a Dungeon Master? Was I off base in any of my suggestions? It's entirely possible. Feel free to email me at info@dlsaga.com or leave a comment down below. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, and you can support the channel by becoming a patron on Patreon or a member on YouTube. You can also pick up DragonLance game materials using my affiliate links. All links are in the description below. Thank you very much to creator patron Aaron Hardy, developer patrons Chris Androu and Sam Ruiz, and all of you YouTube members. This channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of the DragonLance Saga. I hope you'll join that celebration. My name has been Adam with DragonLance Saga, and until next time, Slanjavar.